What happens when two successful entrepreneurs get together for a drink? They talk shop, of course. So grab your favorite cocktail and sit alongside Scott DeLong and Vince Moiso, two seasoned business leaders that have driven their own companies to success, as they share from their experience and dive deep into the secret sauce that can turn a company around. The CEO Podcast starts now.
Hey everybody, Vince Moiso here with the CEO Podcast, and I'm sitting here with my friend Scott DeLong, ready for our next episode. Today we're going to talk about executive presence, and what that means. So, whether you're C-level, whether you're VP, executive VP, if you're in key positions within a business, or elsewhere, there's leadership positions,
Sure.
whether you're sitting on a board of directors,
Sure.
and you're in an executive position with board of directors, or, I don't care. You can be
I would say
academia.
a little league board.
Yeah,
You want to have presence,
absolutely.
right?
Well, really what we want to discuss today is really what does that even mean, right?
Yeah.
What does it mean to have executive presence? And I want to add to that, Scott, is like, what came to mind for me when we talked about this as a topic is also, what are the expectations, right? The external expectations
From
of
others.
from others,
Yeah.
for executive presence.
Yeah.
And especially as we look historically at it versus really today, because I think the landscape has changed.
Changing.
Well, and continues to change. I think the expectations are different, and I think we're going to start to see the landscape change a lot faster than it has in the past.
So here's why this topic became important to me to talk about. So I do work with organizations on getting, a lot of times on getting their next layer of management ready for the C-suite.
Yeah.
And I often find some of the vice presidents that I deal with solid, smart. They know their stuff. They get their stuff done.
Yeah.
They're actually really good individual contributors.
Yeah.
With a vice president title. And the difference between those folks and being able to work the C-suite, command the C-suite, work the boardroom, command the boardroom, is presence.
Yeah.
And they weren't taught. Their job was to get this division working, or this department under control, but they weren't taught what that next level is, and that next level is necessary because of those expectations. Give you an example. Let's say you got a private equity firm that owns an organization, and they bought them because of their leadership team.
Yeah.
Well, those folks end up retiring. Why? That buyout gave them stock options, and they got some money, and right, they're not going to live or not. They're not going to work the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
So they're looking for their exit as well.
Yeah.
And rarely are the next level people ready.
Yeah.
So what do? The PI guys, they go out and hire someone from the outside and completely change the culture and destroy that. So folks have me come in and work with that next level to get them ready for the boardroom.
Well, sometimes, what I found in my experiences in a few businesses that I've come into is it wasn't even defined. Somebody just got elevated, as a top performer, and they got elevated to a VP role because they were asking for it and they wanted to advance their career or whatever it might be. They don't want to lose the person.
There are all kinds of reasons.
And you make that decision to bring them up to that executive level or that VP role, but then nobody ever just even defined it. Right. So let alone develop them or, had them take a management course or, go take a course to help them or get a coach or whatever it took to develop them is, I think, as a first step, just define what that means, So like, I'm really keen. I don't care what the position is, whether it's executive or not. I'm really keen on defining the role, defining the expectations for that role.
Sure.
And then I'm very adamant and very direct because I do have, like with the glass company right now, I have two key people that want to step into a VP role, and I have constant, coaching sessions with them where we're defining what that even means.
Right.
So it's defining the difference between being a vice president versus being a director.
Yeah. And the difference is they don't know. What does it take?
Right.
And if you haven't defined it for them, how do you expect? Then once you've defined it, now how do you help them grow to that spot? Because
Well,
it's not natural.
I flat out asked them, when they said, when they said that they wanted that growth path. I said, great, what does that mean to you? And in one situation, there was no answer because they weren't sure.
There's a clue.
But it's just a title, you know? And I think to a lot of people, it's just a title move. And to them, it's like, great, I want that title. Okay, great. But what does that mean to you? And what does it mean to you to be a vice president? So I typically start there and then I coach them through that and we build a growth path. I think it's a mistake when people get elevated. And then once they're in that position, right, as you stated earlier, there has to be development to get them ready for the next level.
Right. So let's go back and define it a little bit. So we're talking about executive president. Well, that's still kind of a mystic term. What does that mean?
Sure.
I use politics in this, and there often in history, we have voted for somebody, JFK, just because they look presidential.
Right.
And so what does that mean?
Well, he has a presence.
Has a presence. Stand tall, shoulders back. Now, this was a guy that had serious illness, right?
Yeah.
And couldn't, but he, in public, JFK stood tall, projected his voice, commanded
Great
the
orator.
room.
Yeah.
He commanded the room. That's what presence looks like. That's what looking presidential looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that's changing somewhat because you can always say, well, General Patton, had presence. Yep, that whole command and control thing, you were scared to shit of Patton.
No, Barack Obama, right? He's a great orator and had that similar type of presence,
had
right?
that presence.
No wonder we were all, enamored by that. I mean, it's just easy. It's when somebody has that level of presence, it's pretty easy to be enamored by that.
So, and I think things are changing though. I don't think you need to be the command and control to have that sort of presence. Obama didn't do that. Others do, and they get away with it still, but it is changing. And the changes that are being made are because diversity's here. It's here to stay, and it's good for us. It's great.
Yeah.
Whether it's racial or gender or whatever it is, diversity's here to stay, and we are going to have to adapt what our expectations are on what that presence means. That doesn't mean they can't have presence, but their presence can be different now.
Yeah.
3 things that I focus on a lot in my life. And I think this is where the migration is going to. I think executive presence requires a bit of humility,
mm-hmm.
a lot of empathy, and some vulnerability. Where 40 years ago, it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that. You were
Mm-hmm.
the opposite of that. The guy that was the rock, right? The stud that was just standing up there and the wind couldn't blow him.
Mm-hmm.
one direction or another. That's what it used to be presidential. I think there's a new presidential coming, and or in here now, but going to be taken over more. And it's based on those 3 things: vulnerability, empathy, and humility. So how do you deal with that? I coach some women executives in this, and one of the things that I found with some of these, with not all women, I don't mean to stereotype, but some of these women have had to act like a man to get to where they are. Be tough, be hard, be whatever, because that's what they thought the expectations were. And what I'm coaching them to do is just the opposite right now,
Mm-hmm.
is use that feminine charm. You've got advantages that we don't have, and that is you're much more likable than that hard-ass General Patton guy
Mm-hmm.
is, right? And to be able to use that while still not giving up your status, your presence.
Well, I think well, I'm going to add because let's say this, and it's not often that this happens. I don't agree 100%. I do agree with.
You're still young.
I do agree with humility. Absolutely. I think that is a trait that all executives should have.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to have an executive president, you have to be humble enough to know when to step aside and let others lead.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important. And I agree with vulnerability.
Okay.
And I do believe that now, which it wasn't, is vulnerability is important for leaders today in order to have that presence. Because what does vulnerability do? Vulnerability draws out vulnerability in others, right?
It is a magnet.
It lets everybody know, and this is a big part of presence. Let everybody knows that you're a human being,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And you can be vulnerable. So I agree with those 2. I also think you have to have the ability to be direct, and you have to have the ability to be bold, and you have to have the ability to be resilient. And if you aren't
Okay.
those three things, I don't. This is to me, it's gender neutral.
So the third one that I said was empathy. You can't argue with that, right? You don't have to have empathy.
Well, okay, I don't think it's required. You said these are the three things
my
that are
gosh.
required.
I think empathy is such an attractive trait.
It's great. I say it because frankly, I struggle with empathy. That being said, it doesn't mean that I'm not empathetic.
Yeah.
And it certainly doesn't mean that I'm not sympathetic in certain situations. I just don't think it's I just don't think it's a requirement.
Think about what's happening in the workplace right now, right? People,
Yeah.
the changing workplace, people are staying home. They got that. What if you don't understand their concerns, their needs, their whatever, they're gone.
Yeah.
I think empathy.
But that doesn't require empathy. I don't think that requires empathy for me to have an understanding.
So define
of it.
empathy then. I'm going to define it as this: an understanding of what the other person's going through.
Sure.
I don't have to cave into it. I don't have to just give. Oh, I'm just saying an understanding of. Now I can't have a complete understanding because I'm not you, but I can make an attempt to, and that attempt is what draws you closer to me. It allows you to see me more human, just like the vulnerability piece does.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
So anyway, is it a?
Are you trying to get me to your side right now? Is that,
no,
is that going
I
on
don't
right
know.
now?
It's just you talk about getting coaching all the time, and every once in a while, I just can't help myself. So,
Well, let me say this because I was also going to go to this. I do think there's an essence of personality type when we talk about executive presence.
Okay.
And so, I'm big on DISC, and we've talked about the DISC personality assessment before. And the great thing about DISC is there's no right personality trait, right? Like, so if you're a high D versus a high C, okay, it doesn't mean you can't be a leader and you can't be an executive. However, it does mean that there are other traits that you need to start to embrace. So if you're total C, it's a challenge for you to really have the presence that a high D might have. So I'm a high D. And so I know in myself that I can almost be intimidating when I come in and command a room, especially in a meeting, and I don't let other people get a word in edgewise, right? So I need to understand, I need to back off those type of things.
Right.
And I have to practice that humility and know when to step back and let others lead.
Yeah.
And that's challenging for me because I'm a high D, but everything else comes very natural in my personality trait. Whereas, if you're a C or an S, or you lean, it's going to be more challenging for some of those traits to come out, which means you just have to work on that. Doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means those are the things that you have to recognize within yourself that you have to work on to have the presence necessary.
But I'm going to argue that it's no more challenging for the S or the C to learn that presence, that command, than it is for you, the high D, to learn the humility.
I agree with that.
You said that's hard.
Yeah, no,
right?
I agree. I completely agree.
It is. And we need a balance of those things in order to have this, what I'm calling executive presence. Executive presence is the ability to command the room, but not have to command the room.
Right.
So I've always been, I'm high on the D and the I chart myself. I've always had the ability to walk in a room and own the room. And I used to think that was an asset, and it is, but it's not always an asset. Sometimes I'm just an ass.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you come in with that and command a room that, who's this guy? Right. So what we're talking about is through this process of learning to deal with to learn the traits that you need to create this presence and subdue the ones when you need to subdue them. Yeah. So I look at it like this. I say, I got this card that lets me command the room when I want to.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of rooms I want to keep that card in my back pocket. I want to keep it back here.
Yeah.
Play it when I need it, not lead with it all the time.
Yeah.
So it's just important. It goes back we were talking about in your book on the self-recognition piece, right? Who I am, what are my strengths, what are my apparent weaknesses, because they're not necessarily weaknesses, but in this situation, right, they might be weaknesses that are viewed as weaknesses by others. Now, how do I combat those, and what do I have to learn to get through those? So you can do a SWOT analysis in yourself.
Yeah.
My strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Well, yeah, I love the personal SWOT analysis. So I developed a personal SWOT analysis, and actually the T for me in a personal SWOT analysis are triggers, not threats.
Okay.
So I want to find out what triggers me, and that actually creates a better presence, right? So recognizing when you're in a heated discussion, whether that's with a customer and you're with some of your employees or other executives or whatever, right? You've got to set that example, and so if you're allowing things to trigger you and set you off, you're not really setting a good. So let me share this analogy. Is early on in my football career in high school. I had a coach tell me, you need to have, if you know football, and I was a quarterback, and so you'll understand some of this jargon. But he says you need to have better poise in the pocket. Well, the problem was I'd never heard the word poise before, so I didn't know what poise meant, right?
Thanks, coach.
So I just nodded my head. I agreed.
Yep.
And, that night I had to go grab my dictionary and look up the word poise, and understood that it meant, calmness, right?
Yeah.
And to have a presence. And just, hey, I've got to have a focus, a presence, and calmness. And that is what encompasses poise. So I never forgot that. I never forgot that. And in fact, I lived that. I worked on it, and it's carried with me in business and in life. And so the example that I'm giving is you have to have that. You have to have that calmness. You have to have that poise as a business leader at the executive level. One thing I want to recommend, and I want to say this because I don't want to lose my train of thought here. If you are a listener right now and you're thinking, I am thinking about advancing my career and I want to be at the executive level, and you're listening to what we're talking about, the thing that you need to start with, and I said it earlier, is define what that even means for you. Like, get an understanding of what it means to be a vice president, or what it means to be a president or an executive vice president. Is like, understand the role before you say, that's my growth path, because otherwise all it is just a title. And you need to understand the expectations and the responsibilities that come with it. And then I would encourage you to ask the question. So, whoever your boss is, if it's a vice president and you want to take their position, or, the president of the company, is find out, what is it going to take? Ask the question, what is it going to take for me to get to that? And can I get training and development to help me
take that
get
SWOT
that?
list of them. Here's my apparent strengths, my what I'm considering my weakness. Would you agree? Which of these do I need to eliminate and put over here in order to take your job?
Yeah.
Right? They'll tell you.
Yeah.
They'll tell you.
In fact, if you go, I'll tell you this, if you go to vincemoiso.com, and on my website, there is a learning section, and you can download for free a personal SWOT analysis. So I have that there. You can download it, and it's already ready for you to fill in.
So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and triggers instead of threats. I like it. That's good. That's good.
And the opportunities, by the way, what I didn't mention too is the O is opportunities for change. So I added that because it's not just opportunities, because I think it's too broad.
Sure.
Right. So when you think of just doing that personal analysis, it's opportunities for change, and then recognizing the triggers that cause bad behavior.
So there's a lot of ways of going about learning this executive presence. Some I'm going to recommend that you do reading. So just read more, keep reading.
Yeah.
Listen to these podcasts or other podcasts or all of that. That's all great. Find a mentor. Find somebody that has a little more gray hair than you and hang out with them for a little bit, right? Pick their brain. See what it is that allows them to command the room, and then ask them about it.
Right.
How'd you develop that? Well, with this one, I was born with that. How would you suggest I develop it within me? Because I'm not born with it, right?
Yeah.
The older people are going to want to help you. They're going to want to give back. There's certainly coaching, right? We're both coaches. There's a ton of coaches out there. We happen to be better than the other guys, but there's other coaches out there too. You could go with them.
I love that you just called out older people.
Yeah.
They want to give back.
Older people. Yeah. Older people older than me. Well, I actually do that a lot. I like mentoring young people.
Yeah.
It's
Me too.
It's a blast.
I was laughing because I'm not sure I'm in that older people category.
Well, it depends
yet.
who you're talking to. Do your daughters think you're old?
Yes, they do.
So it depends on your point of reference. Back to the Einstein theory.
So do their friends. They all think I'm old.
Oh yeah. All right. So the other things that I think you should do, or could do to work on this personal SWOT analysis is a great thing. Journaling is a great thing.
Yes, it is.
As you see people in the world, and observation of others. Who is it that's out there, whether they're on television, the news, and movies, wherever you see somebody, out in the grocery store, doesn't matter, that looks the part.
Yeah.
Right? That looks, I don't know how to define it as much as I know it when I see it. Who out there has it? And watch them and observe them. It's a great way of doing it. Now, you might not get all their tricks and trades by just observing, but ask them, talk to them, or talk to other folks, or get yourself a coach, or read some books and see if you can apply some of the lessons. One of the main things that I've seen with most vice presidents when their careers get stalled is just that, the executive presence. It's not because they can't think strategically. It's not because they don't have any talent. It's not because of that. It's because they are not meeting the expectations of the people that are going to promote them.
Yeah. I was just going to touch on that. And in fact, I've experienced that and had to let VPs go because they just were not, meeting those expectations. Yeah. So I have done that. And I wanted to touch on one other thing too, because we're talking about if you're an aspiring executive,
sure,
right? Well, what if you are an executive and you feel like you're stagnant in your career at this point, and you don't feel like you're getting the results that you want, or maybe others are not seeing the results or whatever, right? Reality is you can, if you're not getting a development, go ask for it, right? Go ask for it. If you're waiting around for someone to do it for you, stop it, right? Like literally, let's talk about that part of being an executive and being executive present, having the executive presence is don't wait around for someone to help you. Don't wait around for somebody to do it for you.
If you're an executive and you're not getting the things that you want to get, and it's because you're missing some of that presence piece,
then go get it.
It's your own damn fault.
Totally.
You can afford a coach.
Totally.
Go get a coach.
Go get a coach.
You can afford a book. Go read a book.
That's it.
Start somewhere. It's your own damn fault if you're not getting what you
Figure
want.
it out.
Once you're an executive.
Figure it out.
But that executive, you're getting a vice president's salary and you can't afford a few $100 to pay someone to help you grow to that next level, which is going to make you thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars by learning that one piece, by having that one card in your back pocket to be able to play when you need it.
Bottom line is figure out what it's going to take to get you to that next level, and that might be coaching, that might be finding development, or having to go out and do that on your own. And really the major point from me is, if you're expecting that to happen organically, that's a very false expectation. Very, very, very false.
Well, I'm a big reader and I like reading books, and I always tell people to read books, but I will also tell you that you are not going to learn all you need out of a book. You need the experiential application of what's in that book. I'll give you an example. So when I teach my courses, we go through chapter by chapter and use this concept matrix. And I ask them, what was important about that chapter? And what did it mean? How can you use it in your life? Each chapter has something in it that's important. Yet if I just asked you about, what'd you get out of the CEO test, the book that's sitting over here in the corner? They say, oh, it was great. You'll probably tell me one thing you got out of it. There are 11 chapters in there. That means there's 11 things in there that you can be doing. So go chapter by chapter and figure out what's in that book, write it out, and talk to somebody about it.
Well, I'll tell you.
You want to own the content? Talk to people about the content.
So in that same section on my website, go to vincemoiso.com, go to the learning section, and you can download my top 10 must-read summaries. So I took the time to totally summarize, because I knew that I was only going to get little tidbits from each of the books that I read. And those are my 10 favorites that have had the biggest impact. And by the way, drilling it down to 10 books was one of the most challenging things that I had to do, because I was at, I think I started at 20 or 25. But But yeah, you can download that for free and you can get those summaries and grab some nuggets. So I want to sum it up really quick because I want to talk about, for everybody to take away, the 5 things that I said earlier, some of the traits to have that presence: humility, vulnerability, be bold, be direct, be resilient. I'll add a maybe to empathy.
All right.
What about you? Top 3, top 5?
Well, so command is part of it. You need to have that. You can't be presidential without command.
Yeah, command the presence.
But what I'm saying is that you don't always want to lead with it.
Yeah.
And I think in the new world, with the new workforce out there right now, millennials in particular, right? The 3 that I strongly believe in, that new leaders are going to have to learn. Not quite yet, but we're migrating to that. Vulnerability, empathy, and humility.
In fact, it's expected, right? Would you go as far to say, as the employees today, they expect the leaders to be that?
The younger employees absolutely do, right?
And they expect that culture shift.
They absolutely
I believe I'm
So-
living that right now.
So I there's other things too, right? You need to know your stuff. You can't fake it.
Right.
So that's all the stuff that's important is still important. You can't fake it. You should have some command of the room. You should have your body language is important.
Yeah.
Right. Not slouching, but sitting up straight, shoulders back, standing tall. Right. Looking to people, smiling. All those things are all part of this as well. Those are things we've learned from generations. But the 3 that I'm adding now: the vulnerability, empathy, and humility.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. It's how you dress, how you look, how you enter a room, when you show up, when you leave.
Yeah.
It's when you hit the executive level, part of executive presence is all eyes are on you, and people are watching, and there's a different level of respect that happens with the title. And that comes with a lot more responsibility for showing up in a different way. So if you're that high performer, that salesperson, or whatever position, and all of a sudden you get elevated to the executive level, you can't show up as that, happy-go-lucky guy anymore, trying to be friends with everybody. That doesn't work in the same way, because the expectations all of a sudden are different. And the way that you show up and the way you're viewed and perceived is very, very different. And so you have a responsibility to
I expect
adapt.
my VP of business development to be able to be good at parties.
Yeah.
But I do not expect my chief sales officer to be a party guy.
Yeah.
Right. So go with
It's a different level of
expectations.
responsibility.
Sure.
It is. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it. Check us out at the ceopodcast.net. As always, we want your feedback. So if you've got some content or a topic that is really hot for you and you'd like us to discuss, or if you have questions or just some response to some of the conversation that we had today, we'd love to get that feedback in. You can find us on YouTube as well. So if you want to check out the video portion of this, then feel free to check us out at our YouTube channel. Just search the ceopodcast.net. And until next time, cheers.
Cheers. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for the CEO Podcast. To learn more about Scott and Vince, please visit theceopodcast.net and check out the calendar to tune in for our next episode. While on the site, you can also listen to past episodes, access additional content created for our listeners, and if you would like to dive deeper into any topic, there is an option to schedule some time with Scott or Vince. Thanks for listening.